Hello everyone and welcome to the 700 subscriber question and answer video. I actually believe we are up to 713 subscribers as of recording this video. It is always astounding to me at every new subscriber, every drop in the bucket makes up the entire bucket, you know, and if those drops weren't in the bucket wouldn't be full. But our bucket is filling, and it is filling all the time. And it just blows my mind that 713, and probably counting, people are interested enough in this funny little cat comic to stay subscribed. Can you guys believe that? Like, forget what I think about it. Can you believe that that many people are interested in being subscribed to this YouTube channel? Like, I'm not saying it's like bad or anything. It's just... And I know that 700 subscribers is like nothing in the grand scheme of the YouTube game, but I feel like for the niche that this is, it is definitely something to be celebrated, and the ones that should be celebrated are you guys, because this number doesn't just come out of nowhere. It only happens because of you. So this is a victory on your shoulders, not just mine. I mean, I put like the foundation there. You guys built the rest of it. But today we are going to answer some questions, maybe even question some questions to the best of my ability. We have a lot to get through, so let's jump right into it. What color is my shirt? I think this is a trick question. I think you're not wearing a shirt. Maybe you're wearing a dress, you know, it could be anything. Why? Just why? I have been asking myself that same question for the last 3.5 years. And I still don't have an answer for it, and nobody else can give me an answer. Apparently they can only ask why, and I'm just like, you know, what do you want from me? This is all I got. And when I say this is all I got, I don't mean the Fanel is all I've got. It's just, I don't know, is all I've got to answer that question. Of all the characters in BCB, which would you consider the second worst of all of them? Because we all know who's the first. I'm going to assume you're talking about Alejandro. Like in an in-universe setting, which is the worst? Alejandro is really bad, but Abby's father did indirectly lead to someone's death. We don't actually know if his actions were directly the cause of Charlotte's death, or if she died during her surgery, or if she successfully had her surgery and died a couple of years later. I don't think Teshi has ever said when exactly Abby's mom died, but it seemed like the surgery was gonna go well, so who the hell knows. But who's the second worst? We'll say Abby's dad is the second worst. Alejandro has also done a myriad of horrible things. You could make the argument, and not that it makes it any less bad, but Abby's dad really only cheated. He was abusive, yes, and that's terrible. But Alejandro has been abusive to so many people. Like, that's not even to mention the sexual assault on Lucy, using Augustus as an accomplice in his crimes, shoplifting. I have a video on Alejandro's crimes, and I know this is kind of getting off topic, but you can go check the video out. But yeah, for my money, I would say Abby's dad is probably the second worst. Now, my second least favorite character in the comic, if that's what you're asking, I have a least favorite character. I don't really have a second least favorite. Maybe Madison is my second least favorite character. But like, even that's kind of like, I don't really feel that strongly about Madison either way, so it's not really saying much. Do you think Paulo and Daisy are going to work out as a couple? Is Paulo truly over Lucy? Do you personally want them to stay together? So this question was asked before I put the Rain Check review up, but that person has now since seen that review. And if you guys haven't seen that review, then go check it out. It's done pretty well, and I'm glad that I was able to articulate my position well enough for people to not only understand where I was coming from, but actually change their mind about Paisley. Obviously, I don't think it is the strongest ship as of now. I'm not against the two being together as like a concept, but it needs a lot of work. And unfortunately, it feels like all the work it would need would have to be like rewriting a majority of the comic to make it work the way that I feel like it should for something that has so much weight to it. As far as them working as a couple, realistically, no, I don't think it's gonna work out. Once they graduate, they're gonna have like nothing to do together. There's gonna be no common school, there's gonna be nothing, right? And this intermission that we're going through right now seems to be kind of like addressing some concerns that people might have, which I will talk more about the philosophy of doing that when I get to the review of that intermission. But it seems that Paulo is very firmly in the I'm just never gonna go to college, and that's just the way it is, Daisy. So we're already kind of starting to see some cracks there. I don't think Paulo will ever be over Lucy. There will always be a part of his brain that is designated for Lucy love. And it is also something I talked about in my video, but if Lucy had never told Paulo to just fuck off and kick rocks and basically force him to get with Daisy, he would have just stayed with Lucy. Like, if she had just been like, yeah, you know, Paulo, I really missed you and I love you too, Daisy would have just been gone. Like, that girl would not, like, they would have been friends, but like, Paulo wouldn't even have cared. Are you kidding me? He wants to be with Lucy. Daisy is like the girl that he got with because his main girl didn't work out. Like, doesn't really seem like a great ship when you put it that way, but that's just the way the comic paints it. I would want them to stay together if Teshi can convince me that they should stay together. I want them to be with people that they are more in tune with. When it comes to relationships, you really have to have things in common. Now, you don't have to have everything in common, but a good chunk of your interests, at least 50% plus, as far as my experience goes, should be common interest, and Daisy and Paulo have literally none. Do I want them to stay together? As of now, no, not really. I mean, that sounds mean. It sounds like I don't want them to be together. Obviously, I want things to work out. It should just be a little bit stronger. Do you think BCB will straight up end with Mike and Lucy declaring themselves as a couple amidst to showing more chapters of the two showcasing their love for each other? I think BCB will end with Mike and Lucy finally put all the bullshit aside for the 8 millionth time, so it won't really be that satisfying, and say that they are a couple. And I think the stuff that Teshi has planned after BCB, the cutesy, fun, slice of life stories that she wants to go back to, will be about Mike and Lucy and Paulo and Daisy if they end up staying together. I don't think that we're really going to see much of them actually in a relationship in the main comic. I think that's going to be extra stuff that comes later. If you could add a chapter/arc into the story, what would it be about, and where would you add it, and why would you add it? So I would add something that I am surprised that BCB has not done yet, even though it feels like it has done like literally everything under the sun as far as teen melodramas, which is a teen pregnancy arc. I think if one of the cast, maybe like Rachel, I would see Rachel maybe ending up pregnant. You know, she really likes to have sex. We're not here to slut shame, but if Rachel ended up getting pregnant because maybe she was rebounding because of what happened with Paulo, that would be an interesting thing to see. We are way too close to the end for that to start happening now. Even if you started it like right after Rachel and Paulo broke up, which was Unspoken Rule, which was like, jeez, that was not that long ago in the universe of the comic. It's like 4 months ago. You could start seeing a pregnancy in that time. Like, she would have to go out that night and get knocked up by somebody, and I don't see that happening. So at some point along the way, maybe Rachel being pregnant, I don't know. I don't know, but like in my head, it feels like teen pregnancy would be something that Teshi would write, but she hasn't done it. And maybe that's because of the rules on Webtoons. Webtoons is a little bit strict about what you're allowed to depict in your comics. I know that there are some pages of BCB that have been edited, or some pages that I think were just straight up omitted from the Webtoons version because it was too much for the guidelines and the terms of service for that website. Where would I add the teen pregnancy? Honestly, sometime maybe starting in volume 4. That would give it like time to play out throughout the next year. So we'll do that. This is outside of what if Lucy got pregnant with Paulo's kid, which honestly, that would be something hella interesting to delve into. I do have a video about that coming up at some point far down the line, about what if Paulo and Lucy had a baby together after the little rendezvous and curtain call. But that would all be stuff that takes place outside of what happens in the comic because Lucy leaves and we never really get to see that pregnancy. Unless Teshi makes a chapter or an intermission about Lucy being pregnant with Paulo's child at her aunt's farm or whatever. I assume this person means, do you think the BCB characters are allowed to develop? People are frustrated with BCB because it feels like the characters don't ever learn their lessons. Like, you have Mike where it feels like he is fully accepted in unfulfilled fantasy that him and Sandy are taking separate paths, and he's come to terms with that and he's fine with that and he's happy to have Lucy in his life. And then to have Hot Pursuit where he goes back and all of that, this is what people mean when they're like, the characters are not allowed to develop. Now, this is a negative development, to be sure, but this is something that Teshi does constantly, where she will have a character learn a lesson and then they immediately go back on everything that they learned. And then people make the argument, oh, well, you know, it's realistic because teenagers don't always learn their lessons. But it's like, people pick and choose when BCB is allowed to be realistic. Like, realistically, Lucy would have died when she jumped off that warehouse or the furniture building or whatever it was. At the very least, she'd have a lifelong injury or some mental ailments or something, some fear of heights. But none of that happens. And people are like, oh, well, you know, it's supposed to be a fantasy, funny cat comic. But then when other things happen that are like, well, this shouldn't happen within the rules of the universe, they're like, oh, well, you know, it's realistic. People like to pick and choose. It's like CinemaSins fans, where like people point out all the flaws with CinemaSins and then they get really uppity and they're like, oh, well, you know, it's supposed to be comedic, even though it's not funny. So yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Which BCB chapter do you want to remove from canon? This one is an easy one. I don't even have to think about it. Behind Closed Doors. Gone. It does damage to the canon. It doesn't really make sense. Teshi admitted when she uploaded the chapter that we didn't need it, and everyone understands why Paulo isn't talking to Daisy. But also this chapter kind of alters the reason why he isn't talking to Daisy. I have a video about Behind Closed Doors. You can go watch that if you want. If it wasn't Behind Closed Doors, I can't really think of a chapter that I would like remove entirely, like one that I hate so bad that I think should just be gone. I would remove Date Night. But when I say I would remove Date Night if it wasn't for Behind Closed Doors, it's more of, I think Date Night should be rewritten to be a little bit more sensical within what's been established in the BCB canon up to that point. Who do you think is the most underutilized character in BCB? Someone who could benefit from being used more? I'm more so asking about secondary characters here. I'm going to assume that doesn't mean Sue. While it would be nice to see more of Sue, I honestly think Jasmine would be a really good character to give a little bit more screen time to. She is a character that, as Lieutenant Amazil eloquently put it, is a narrative cocksleeve, which basically means that she exists to pad out Paulo's relationship runtime until we can get to the endgame ship. And kind of to a certain extent, Rachel was that, but Rachel had a little bit more to do afterwards and also during that time. I just wish that Jasmine, someone that clearly has a lot going on for her, could get a little bit more to do. What era of BCB is your favorite in terms of art style? Volume 2 and 3 were really good, especially 3. I mean, all the art styles are unique and they're great in their own sense. I would say the digital style is probably my least favorite of all of them, because every artist has their weak points, right? And the digital style makes Teshi's weak points of her artistry a little bit more evident than the older, rougher styles do. Volumes 2 and 3 were like peak BCB. That's when the characters like really looked like not chibi anime uwu desu characters. Unfortunately, Teshi ended up changing her style because people were like thinking it was too furry or saying it was like furry-like. And it's unfortunate because that also is my personal favorite art style that she's done, and I think a lot of people really like that style as well. All of her styles have been fine. Doing everything in watercolor is absolutely insane. I have one of the watercolor pages. It's in my cabinet because it kept falling off the wall, which is the reason why it hasn't been up there. And of course you can see the other physical style of Feline Filibuster, which had the R slur in it. So that's cool. It's right up there on the wall for me to look at every single day. What story arc of BCB is your favorite and why? So this one's another easy one. The Silvershore arc is easily the best arc that she has ever written. The Silvershore arc was such a tightly wound, well-written, well-paced series of chapters that wrapped up things that had been setting up for the last several chapters. It felt like a lot of natural and earned and understandable conclusions to all the drama that had been built up. It also is the first time that Lucy actually says out loud that she loves Mike. Not to him, of course. She says it to Zachary, but she does admit out loud that she loves Mike. So in that, we also have a lot of characters setting up for things that happen later, like having these great revelations and the great character development. Outside of that, and like it being a really unique environment that we haven't really seen, like Golden Hour takes place at a beach. There's like kind of a beach in Carry Me. Silver Shore is like its own unique world, and that's why I wanted to do the entire thing as a dub, because it feels like an epic adventure with all this drama and all these sights and things, and crazy stuff happens, and action and romance. The Silver Shore arc has everything that makes BCB great at its best, and that's why it is my favorite. Are you excited for the Switch 2? Yes, I have been chomping at the bit. It was more exciting before Nintendo announced it, like all the leaks, like, oh, which one's true? But then they announced it and it was awesome. Like, we got a new Mario Kart on the way, which I am beyond excited for. I cannot wait. It has been a decade since the last Mario Kart game, so we are beyond past due for a new one. I think that's what I'm most excited about, is a new Mario Kart. But of course I'm interested to see what new features Nintendo has for the Switch 2. There's possibly like some mouse features that the Joy-Cons are going to have, but we'll see when we get there. It'll be April 2nd when we get the Nintendo Direct all about Switch 2, and I'm very excited. Do you still play that indie game about Duendes? So for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, he is talking about a little indie game called Voices of the Void. And Duendes is a reference to what Joel of Arc Skeletor calls the aliens. He calls them evil duendes.
No alien! No duende!
And he rants and raves about them. And unfortunately, no, I have not played that game in months. While I think it is a very great game and it is amazing that it is still free, or at least the last time I checked, which was quite some time ago, it was free, I feel like the game got over-designed and it left little room for you to actually stew in the silence and like anticipate whatever creepy thing's gonna come up. You just have so much busy work to do now in the game and like so many different intricacies that it kind of takes away from like the impending doom or like the isolating fear that the game gives you. You don't have enough time to sit and think in your anxiety. Now, I will mention an indie game that I have been obsessed over recently, which is called On Your Tail. It is on Steam. I cannot recommend this game enough.
You can fish, you can swim, you got a Vespa. You can do all kinds of things. You can do a marble game. Listen, chat, I didn't make her do that. Okay.
I know $35 is a steep asking price for a lot of people, especially for an indie game, but it is absolutely worth it. I have enjoyed every second of that game. It is awesome. Please go play it. Support those devs. Please leave a review so they can get overwhelmingly positive on Steam. It's at a very positive right now. They're not paying me to say this. I just really love the game, and they have a cute, Sue-like nerdy cat girl in it that I fell in love with instantly.
Anyway, time to see the cute cat girl. Where is the cat girl? Oh my god, I'm gonna get to go to her room. Chat. It's the girl. It's the girl, chat. There she is. Oh man, dude.
On Your Tail, that's the indie game I'm playing now. Which of all the BCIs to date is your favorite? That one is a really tough one to say. I know there is Apollo Exu BCI that's really cute. All of them are great in their own way. I have not read all of them in quite some time. Oh, you know what? There are two really good ones. They're both Musou related. One is Another Kiss, which is what if Mike had actually cut through Lucy's bullshit after confrontation. Was like, Lucy has like a little bit of a scared confession to Mike, and he's like, oh, I always wanted to hear you say this, it means so much, and then they kiss again, and then they go sit by a tree, and it's the end. There's another really great Musou one where what if Mike had said yes to Lucy when she confessed her love? That one's also great. Oh, also Another Flame is great, which is what if Mike had hung up on Sandy? Maybe that's my favorite one. There's a lot of good Musou ones because it's just like, this is the satisfying thing that would make it so much better. But like Another Flame, that feels like it could so viably happen that it is frustrating that it did not happen. And I'm biased because I wrote Scarf and Bow, but there it is. I think a lot of people, especially after reading Scarf and Bow and then Another Flame came out, were like, this is unironically better than what we have now. You know what? Fuck it. Another Flame's my favorite, I guess. But I have a lot of favorites. Same question, but for Patreon comics. and I'll skip the Tumblr Ask blog drawings because nearly half of them are in the mini book. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of the Patreon comics, but I'm just gonna go with the one where Hannah, who's the dyslexic girl from the featured attraction chapter, actually gets to go home and download the anime movie so she can finally watch it. That's a good one. I like that one. Any plans to start covering other comics, given Teshi not even hiding anymore how she's wrapping up Plot Point and preparing for 3 in-comic months filled to the brim with things happening? And despite her saying that she might just continue BCB, who knows if it will be in the same form. So this question, I believe, was asked before Teshi actually announced that BCB is to end at chapter 140. As of now, that could change. Teshi has been known to set like end dates and end spots for herself, and then she just continues. And she says that chapter 140 should come out sometime in 2029. So we have another 4 years, which doesn't seem like a long time, but trust me, it is gonna be a long time. There is so much content to cover with BCB, which I know a lot of people will laugh at, but like you have community stuff, there's like gonna be 140 chapters and then all the intermissions on top of that to review. So the BCB fandom could just keep going at infinitum, and it's really hard to say. Like we have another 4 years, so who knows what's even gonna happen. But as of right now, I don't have any plans to start covering other comics outside of the April Fool's Day stuff. When Kazuna will continue her multiverse adventures. So they're talking about Kazuna in the Candyverse of Chaos, which is a story I started writing and then I just kind of dropped it, but I have still been writing it. I actually finished the second to last chapter last night, and hopefully we'll start on the final chapter at some point soon. I have a really good idea of how I want it to end, so there's really no issues with that, but it will start coming out sometime this year. I know it has been a very long time, and I know a lot of people are like, oh my god, what happens next? Because it does open itself up for anything happening, but hopefully I have written an exciting and interesting story and you guys will enjoy it, but that will come out very soon, I promise. Any old and deleted out of canon plot lines, characters, and or plot points you wish were present and lasted to this day, be they from recent redraws and changes or from original full of fan characters days. There really isn't. The only thing I would say is like bring the pets back, but with the comic actually ending in February, and I mean like in universe February, by the way, I should have said this in the other question, but yes, Teshi said that the end of BCB will not be at junior prom, but at the end of February in the BCB universe. So the chances of the pets coming back before that time, probably not likely, but maybe we'll see them come back in the after comic stuff, who knows. But that's the only thing I can think of. I understand why Teshi doesn't have them around anymore because they're from another period of not just the comic but internet culture, so they don't really make sense anymore. But then again, that's the point of being a creator, is that you can come up with fun and creative ideas to do with them. And I think a lot of people miss when BCB was a little bit more fun and fancy free, you know? How can the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise be fixed? This is an excellent question. Sega needs to take Sonic a little bit more seriously. He is a little bit too in on the joke, and they really need to go back to the way things were before Sonic Colors. For better or for worse, Sonic is coolest when he is actually cool and not like trying to be an MCU character. And I know that Sonic Colors came out before the Avengers did, but to constantly just like wink and nod at the audience, I don't know, it doesn't have the same vibe. Like there was a level of self-seriousness that Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and even the games that came out after that had, that made him seem a lot more badass than he is now. I know he was always quippy and he was like, haha, I'm making jokes against Eggman, but now it's like, you can't take him seriously. And if you can't take someone seriously, they're not really that cool. So yeah, they need to get his cool back, you know? I loved Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the movie, but Sonic was a little bit too immature there, and I think they could have dialed back his annoying one-liners a lot more. Pancakes or waffles? Choose carefully. Honestly, I could go either way, but I'm gonna have to go with waffles. They edge things out just by a little bit, but it's only because they're a little bit better at holding the flavor of whatever you want to mix with them, whether it be blueberries, chocolate chips, or just standard old butter and syrup. It's also been a really long time since I've had pancakes or waffles. And it's a shame because there's like an IHOP, but International House of Pancakes, like right down the road, that sells waffles despite the name. Favorite soda? I actually don't drink soda. I drink water. I haven't drank soda in I haven't even drank anything that wasn't water in like a very long time, but I'm gonna go with a root beer. That's my soda of choice. Favorite shooter game? Half-Life 2. Easy peasy, not even a close question. Favorite book other than BCB? I'm gonna have to go with The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. This book is incredible. It has inspired a lot of authors, and you can tell why. It is a story all about knowledge and learning and why it is important. It is wildly imaginative. It's not the longest read in the world, but it is an excellent read. It is a blast the entire way through. Go check out The Phantom Tollbooth. Even if you're not a reader, you will enjoy this book. Favorite movie? Hard to say. There's a lot of favorite ones out there, but we're going to go with Finding Nemo just because that's the one I like to default back onto. It is a great movie. I understand that there are better movies out there, and maybe even movies that I might enjoy now more than Finding Nemo, but we're just going to say Finding Nemo for ease's sake. Favorite superhero? Doctor Strange. If I could have any superhero's powers, it would be Doctor Strange's powers. Favorite show? This one's also another hard one because I don't really watch shows. There are a lot of shows that are like excellent, like The Boondocks is fantastic. Mythbusters is fantastic. I like the show on the Hub called Dan Versus. Yeah, you thought I was going to say My Little Pony, didn't you? No, it's Dan Versus. I love that show. King of the Hill's also great. There's a lot of fantastic shows out there. I like Gravity Falls too. The first 3 seasons of SpongeBob. It's hard to say which one's my favorite because they're all excellent for very different reasons. It's like apples to oranges, you know? Congrats for the 700 subs, man. Now for 1,000. We're gonna go beyond 1,000. We're just gonna keep going until we run out of numbers. My question is this. Do you like the way they handle BCB in terms of character development? Since I feel like a lot of the characters don't manage to fully grow, even though that seems to be the intention. Except my glorious King Paulo, of course. Alright, so this is kind of like the question from earlier where they were like, do you think BCB characters are allowed to develop? People like to conflate negative development for not development. People want to see their heroes develop positively. Has Paulo developed positively? In some ways, yes. In other ways, not so much. He's a bit of a mess. BCB in general is messy. It's not a mess, it's messy. And I think these are excellent lessons. I think Teshi's gonna take those lessons she learned from BCB and apply it to whatever she does next, even if it is just more BCB. And she can kind of do like a soft reboot of the franchise and take all the lessons, really figuring out the nitty gritties and maybe not letting what is the most dramatic thing that could happen determine every plot point and character decision, which is a whole thing in and of itself. This is more of a question, do I like it? Do I agree with it? They're really not my characters to develop. I mean, honestly, who's to say how these characters should develop? There are certain things that feel like hard and fast truths of how things would realistically play out. But this is a fictional world and all these characters were created by Teshi, so she's really the only one that knows what is going on inside their heads. It kind of reminds me of a Stan Lee quote where he was talking about how people always ask him, you know, which superhero would win in a fight, and I don't remember which two. I think it was like Iron Man or Spider-Man or some shit like that. And he says, whoever I want to win the fight, because he's the one writing the story. And I think the same thing goes for BCB. The characters develop in ways that Teshi wants them to develop, because they're her characters. Since this is Fanal, are you planning on covering even more fan comics, stories, and other things? Ad libitum readings, RPG playthroughs, and streams about Agent's character analysis docs were nice, but we all know there's way more fan-made stuff in the wild since 2010s to make videos about, some nearly lost to time. Unfortunately, there is fan works that are lost media, like the animated adaptation of Feline Filibuster, and I did actually look into that to see if I could get it, and the guy that made it was like, yeah, that thing's gone forever. Unfortunately, there is the smallest possibility that maybe one of the voice actors on that project might have a copy saved somewhere, but I'm not holding my breath. If one of those voice actors or actresses ends up watching this video, if you happen to have it somewhere, maybe you could send it to me. I have the email, I'll put it on the screen right now, or you can even join us in the Discord, which is going to be linked in the description below. But yeah, I do intend on covering more fan stuff. I do plan on making a video about Batesian's Sandy AMV, because I did leave a comment on there when it first came out saying that it was so good that I could make an entire video explaining why it is so good. And I actually do do plan on starting to work on that this year. Once I get done with this video and then Will Lucy have survived her jump video, I will actually start writing a video about why that video is so well done. But I will continue to read fan fictions once we get done with Ad Libitum. I'm kind of just going down the list of the fan fictions that are on Archive of Our Own and just reading those in order. Ad Libitum is kind of a long one, so we're going to be with that one for a little bit. But yes, I do plan on covering a lot more stuff with the community. It is a little bit tough because people get squeamish when I talk about like their art, and that's a whole thing I won't get into this video. I've talked about it in the State of the Fanel address. I will continue to talk about fan stuff. And hey, look, if Agent comes up with any more Google Docs, I will absolutely cover it happily on the Fanel live stream. That's awesome. I only started viewing this channel recently, but the vids are really well made. Thank you, I appreciate that. I put a lot of work into them and I tried to make them as visually interesting as I can. I know that it is just static comic panels, but I try to sprinkle in some fun visuals in there when possible. My question is, do Mike and Lucy even have a chance of getting back together, even just as friends? Absolutely. Here's the thing about life, guys. Friends are gonna fight. Even the best of friends, the closest of friends, the longest of friends are gonna have fights. And something that maybe Teshi will still do that could be interesting is the parents getting involved. I know she doesn't like doing that because that's like the fix everything button is all the parents get involved. Even though the last time the parents got involved, it caused their daughter to jump off of a building, but that is neither here nor there. But for the parents to recognize that Mike and Lucy have been the closest friends for like their entire lives and see that there is something wrong between them, they could step in and be like, look, we understand that you guys are going through a tough spot right now, but you two have been friends for the longest time, and a good, close best friend like that is a very valuable thing. And whatever's going on, I'm sure you guys can work it out and become friends again, because it is important that you have that bond, that friendship. I actually started writing a story that maybe I'll eventually finish at some point, which was just that. Mike's mom and Lucy's mom get together and they set up a camping trip with Mike and Lucy. Now, of course, neither Mike nor Lucy know that this is gonna happen, but basically the parents get out there and Mike and Lucy have to share a little tent while the parents sleep in like an RV or like a camper or something. And they kind of have to learn to get along and mend their friendship. But who knows if we're gonna see that? Probably not, because that would be interesting. And Lord knows that would not be the most dramatic thing in the world. So there you go. So do I think they have a chance of getting back together? Yeah, I mean, that's how it's gonna end. Like, it's kind of obvious, and of the two things that could happen, the least satisfying of the two would be them not getting together, even if them getting together also would be a little bit weird because of everything that's happened, even though I just said that they should totally make up and be friends. Whatever. We'll see at chapter 140 where things are, right? What do you think of the comic so far? Excellent question. I think, as I said earlier, that BCB is messy. Not a mess, messy, which is like not as much of a mess, but still a bit of a mess. And I think that Teshi has learned a lot while making this comic. The do's and the don'ts of not just like the artwork, but storytelling in general. It certainly taught me a lot about storytelling, for better or for worse. And so I think that it is fine. It is frustrating, but it is fine. It is what it is. I know it is what it is might not be the best way to review a webcomic. That kind of just sounds like you're apathetic towards it. But in this case, you just kind of have to accept BCB as what it is, which is all over the place. There are no rules, nothing matters, anything could happen, and it's gonna be frustrating most of the time, and some of the times it's gonna be awesome. That's my take on it. How would you go about giving best girl Rachel more screen time? Pregnancy art, just like I said earlier, pregnancy art, make her pregnant, give that doggo a puppy. I was introduced to the comic relatively recently and I really enjoyed it. I'm glad there are channels like yours, it's cool. My question is, how do you think the comic will end? What's the most likely outcome? Or what are some of the options that might be out there? The comic's full of plot twists, so it would be interesting to get your masterful opinion. I wouldn't call my opinion masterful, but I do appreciate it. The most likely outcome is that Mike and Lucy just get together and then it ends. Mike breaks up with Sandy. Alejandro shows up and goes, "Roar, I'm evil." And then Mike and Lucy go, "No, we love each other." And then they get together after they beat Alejandro with the power of friendship and love. So that's what I think will happen. I know that it probably won't because that would be interesting, but I've been wrong before, and also Teshi seems to be using my fan fictions as a template on how to write this comic, so, you know, maybe we will see an Alejandro kidnaps Mike, Lucy, and Sandy arc. Wouldn't that be something? Good job with the channel so far. Thank you. Here's my question. Have you ever seen the webcomic release review of BCB? And if so, what do you think about it? It's obviously outdated, but still an interesting point of view, IMO. So I actually did react to this video. You can go check out a live stream I did like a year ago. I'll put the link of it in the description below where you can go check out my thoughts on it, and then I rant about Teshi and Suitcase for entirely too long afterwards. I do plan on coming back around and making a full video and like doing a proper analysis. It is important to keep in mind that that video was made at a certain point in the comic, so he didn't have all the information. Now, it is interesting to hear him say certain things where you're like, oh my god, this guy doesn't even know that that thing you just said is gonna happen, or like things that feel like eerily like foreshadowing. But I think for the most part, he got a lot of things wrong about it, but such is the nature of reviewing this comic. Like when I reviewed the Bad Webcomics Wiki review of this comic, a lot of the stuff was just wrong. There was some stuff in there that was legitimate, but those things were also things that got fixed in time. If you could hop into BCB and speak to one character for 5 minutes, who would you talk to and when in the series would you talk to them? Maybe I would talk to Mike. I don't know. Like, if I talked to Paulo, it would be a joint venture between me, Paulo, and Daisy, where I would be like, look, kids, I know that you admire each other, but I'm telling you, it's not going to work out because you don't have any interests. And it's awesome that you admire each other and you care about each other so deeply, but you can't confuse your feelings of admiration for feelings of love. I mean, you can love your friends, right? But as Mike says, it's as deep as a romantic love, but it is not quite that. That is an important lesson that I think Daisy and Paulo are gonna have to learn, but they're probably not going to because that's not the way the comic is going, and it is not the kind of stories that Teshi likes to tell, even though she has told that, but not with these characters. But maybe that could still happen, who knows? So I would probably sit down and talk with Mike. I would basically do what Augustus did, but like with the experience and hindsight of being a 29-year-old adult, and say, look kid, I get that you were concerned Sandy might hurt herself. I understand that. But you can still be there for her, in a manner of speaking, without being in a relationship. You can still be friends. You should just break it off with her. You're not going to be alone. Something that I don't see people often talk about is why did Mike take her, like he's not scared to be alone, because he doesn't actually say he took Sandy back because he loved her. He said he took her back because he felt guilty. That is a very interesting thing to point out. So I would just be like, look, you're gonna hurt her feelings. You're gonna hurt a lot of people's feelings throughout your life, and it's just the way it's gonna have to be. You're gonna have to accept that you're gonna have to make some hard decisions that are going to hurt someone. I mean, I've done that recently, but it was the right decision to make in the long run, even though I knew it was gonna hurt the person, and it hurt me a little bit as well. So you just have to accept that you're gonna hurt people, and that's the way it is. And I know that that is kind of what Daisy was talking to Mike about being too nice, and he kind of has to like stand up for himself. If they all were way more realistic cat/dogs, which one would you interact with or even adopt as a pet? Probably either Augustus or Amaya, since I think Amaya would like to have attention, but she wouldn't like be super fussy. Does that make sense? Like she wouldn't be like scratching up the furniture or jumping on a bunch of stuff. She seems like the kind of cat that would just as much love to lay in your lap and get a bunch of loving as she would like to lay in the sun and take a little nap. And Augustus feels more like a cat that would like to mostly be left alone, mainly just appreciate sleeping in the sun. Where are the diamonds? Hey, shut up. Do you think Paulo X Daisy is a good ship? Has it been set up and entered into well? And is there any realistic chance they stick together? I have very good news for you, because you can go watch the review for Rain Check right now, and it'll answer all your questions in depth. I already responded to them with kind of that on the BCB thread, but I'll quickly answer those questions now. So first one, I don't think it's a bad ship, but I think as it stands now, no, it is not a good ship. It needs a lot of work. Has it been set up and entered into well? No, not at all. Absolutely not at all. And the only way to fix that is to rewrite like the last 18 years of BCB. So good luck with that happening. And is there any realistic chance they stick together? Not at all. Once these two graduate, they're going to be going down such drastically different paths in life that it isn't even going to matter. They are going to have to come to the hard facts that it's just not going to work out, and they're going to have to split ways. Still be very good friends, but they're going to have to find people that are more like them. 2. What chapter do you consider to be the cutoff point after which things kind of fall apart narratively? For me, it's the beginning of Volume 6. Not only did Sandy start to get character assassinated for plot convenience, but Lucy's return immediately afterward was a mess. Dial tone / table for one was a mess too, what with psychic premonitions and all that nonsense. Honestly, for me, Hot Pursuit was probably the point where the comic was just like, that's it. Nothing matters. Nothing I set up or say matters. We can just do whatever we want. It set a bad precedent that Teshi continues to follow to this day. And at this point, I have to accept that that's just the way Teshi likes to tell stories. It is not the most satisfying thing in the world. And as we've seen with Paulo and Daisy getting together, it's like even when she gets to the point where she's ready to wrap a story up, it just doesn't work because she made everything up to that point so unsatisfying or like weird that you're just sitting there confused. Like, I don't understand why these two are in love. I can see why they admire each other, but why are they in love? And all of BCB is like this. Which characters have your opinions changed the most? For me, I used to really like Paulo, but the constant resets where he'd have epiphanies and then immediately forget them wore my patience down, and now I feel that Abby was always right. Contrary-wise, I used to find Sandy irritating, but having reread some of the comic recently, it jumped out to me how kind and patient she was, and how incongruous ghosting Mike and all was with their previously established character. I don't really think there's a character or one specific character that my opinion has changed on drastically. There are characters that I was just kind of indifferent towards that I really like now. Like Sue is not really a character that I really thought about much at the beginning, but as time went on, I really started to like her. Mainly it's like the ships where I like start feeling strongly about them. Like I really thought Paulo and Daisy were cute when I first started reading the comic, and now obviously my opinion has greatly changed on that. It kind of works in a fanfic sense, but not in a canonical sense, if that makes sense. Definitely the biggest change was like me just really going full tilt into Paulo and Sue. It's just like there's so many interesting things that you can do with these two. I also just kind of like the haters to lovers trope. Those two fit the bill like perfectly. They're not like enemies, but you know, they're not really like the bestest of friends either. I just feel like there's a lot you could work with there that you really don't necessarily have with Daisy being with Paulo. What questions did you expect doing this? Honestly, I've gotten a lot of weird questions for this one. I remember, I think it was the previous question and answer. Someone asked me what I thought about Abby and Mike having the smallest penises of the cast. Like, well, I mean, it is what it is, you know. It's Teshi says it. I don't really know what to say about that. But I didn't really get any weird questions this time. Everybody was kind of above bar. How do you think BCB compares to other legacy webcomics, and how might creators, webcomics or otherwise, learn lessons from the successes and pitfalls Teshi and Suit made? Big picture stuff right here. Legacy webcomics. I feel like BCB is kneecapped by the way Teshi and Suitcase handle it. They don't market it properly, and they also kind of don't treat the community the best. They kind of like look down on everyone, like everyone is just lesser and should just serve them. Like there are screenshots of them literally saying this kind of shit, and if I can find them, I'll put them up. I wouldn't just make some shit up about them that I didn't see for myself. But yes, I think that if they learn to market it correctly and were a little bit nicer, then things will be a bit better for BCB as far as legacy is concerned, because everyone that I meet that used to read the comic are like, oh god, I hate that comic now, or ugh, Suitcase is such a dick. Like the number of times that I have met people online that were like, oh, I remember BCB, I fucking hate Suitcase, it's just nuts. Look, if it's one person, it's whatever, but enough people keep saying it, there must be a problem. And I think something that creators can learn from this is, one, learn to network properly, and two, just be nice to your community, be understanding, be forgiving, and really give people the opportunity to grow and to learn from their mistakes. I think that's the most important thing we can do for each other, is to allow us to learn from our mistakes instead of wanting to just beat people down because it makes us feel good in the moment. 3. Why? That's a good question. Just like earlier, I've been asking myself that same thing for the last 3.5 years. What other webcomics aside from Sabrina and BCB would you recommend? He's talking about Sabrina Online. Honestly, I don't really read any other webcomics. Well, one that I have been looking into recently is Normalsville is actually pretty funny. I've also enjoyed things like Boxes of Chocolates, which hasn't updated in a while. Bleeding Hearts is also another really excellent webcomic. Shifterhood, amazing webcomic. Go check it out. Also Spirit Guild. Go check out Spirit Guild. Also Lackadaisy is pretty good, even though I'm not really in that community anymore and the comic hasn't updated, but that's because they're doing the animated adaptation. So yeah, all those webcomics that I just mentioned, go check out. Well guys, that brings us to the end of this question and answer video. It has been a long time and I can't believe we ever got to this point. Like, the fact that this many people give enough of a shit about this webcomic is like... And I'm not saying that BCB doesn't deserve people giving a shit about it, but when I started this, I could have never even imagined 50 subscribers. I was just like, this is gonna be some weird cope thing that I do for a little bit and then it's gonna be done. Now it's like become this big thing. We have this big community on Discord and we're always working on new stuff and it just is mind-blowing. You never can predict what's going to become big. And I know that 700 subscribers isn't really that big in the grand scheme of YouTube, but it's big to me, damn it, and every single one of you guys is important, and I hope you feel that way as well. Thank you for all the love and the support and the building me up and the building each other up too. I really want the Fanel to be like a bridge for all the community to come together to appreciate the webcomic through its ups and its downs and its all-arounds. And I don't really have much else to say. I'm looking forward to the next 700 subscribers and 700 more after that and after that and after that. Hopefully I will come up with better ideas for subscriber specials outside of getting you guys to ask me questions. But I don't know, maybe you guys like these videos. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And thank you for all the questions and I will see you all next time.